Gaywatch, where we watch gay things. Happy Halloween, everybody. Are you having a shut-in Halloween, which is entirely valid? That's what I'm having to do this year. Are you going out for Halloween? Are you spending time with, like, your partner for Halloween? Like, what is up? What is going on? We love Halloween in this neck of the woods. We have to celebrate. That's why we have a special co-host today instead of a usual appearance from Jiao or Shen Wei. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but The Nightmare Before Christmas is extremely important to my being, like my fundamental, foundational being. Nightmare Before Christmas was a formative experience for me growing up in my adolescence, and let me tell you, it has not left me at all. So I've thought it only fitting to really overwhelm you with Jack Skellington today. So here's what we're doing. We are working our way through Volume 2 of Guardian. We read for a couple of hours. We usually take a break somewhere around halfway. For just a few minutes, we get through about 40 to 50 pages. Please no spoilers in the chat because there's always some people who are reading along who have never seen the show, never read the book, they're going in totally blind, they don't know what's going on. I've seen the show, I have not read the book, so I kind of have an idea of what's going on, certainly for some of the bigger things, but obviously I don't know anything about any of the changes. Now, other than that, there's just one more thing that I wanted to mention before we started. I do kind of apologize in advance. I didn't want to initially drop this into something like a Halloween episode. I wanted to say it in the previous stream ahead of time, but I kind of forgot. But since this is the last stream before it happens, I have to bring it up just for a second. Americans, it is election day in just a few days. In fact, the next stream that we have on this channel will literally be on election day. It is next Tuesday. Not only am I encouraging you to vote, please, but also this is just a little PSA to say that it is actually easier to arrange getting to your voting place and all of the logistics. It's much easier than maybe you think it is. So for those people who are being like, yeah, you know who you would vote for, but you're like, I can't get a ride there, or it would be too much of a hassle, or any reason, I don't know where my polling place is. It's very easy to find that information online. In fact, I'm going to drop a link in here real quick because Uber has a very special arrangement going on, as they usually do, and this was just the first resource I could think of off the top of my head. There are plenty of resources available to you to get to the right place on election day. The link is in the chat now if you need to find out. And with Uber, you get to the polling place, and all that stuff is taken care of for you. And the ride itself is cheaper. That is it. That is the PSA. Now, we are on page, pardon me, we are on page 73 for chapter 6. The previous stream was a bit of a marathon in terms of it feels like everything happened in the previous stream. But the thing is that we're towards the beginning of volume 2, and this is a 3-volume series. So if we did everything we did in the previous stream now, then what the hell are you supposed to do for the rest of the series? This couldn't have been the high point. You know what I mean? I'm terrified. Let's go. A little past 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just as dusk was setting in, Zhu hurriedly arrived at the hospital with the proper authorizations for a joint operation. The people from the district bureau just left, Zhu said. I ran into them downstairs. They said they wanted to treat us to dinner sometime, so... At the sight of Shen Wei approaching, she abruptly cut herself off. After taking a moment to rephrase what she was saying for an outsider's ears, she finished... So the case is entirely ours, for now. Noticing her hesitation, Shen Wei quickly handed the drinks he'd just bought to Jalan Lan. In an understanding tone, he said, Please do your work, everyone. You're not going anywhere. Jalan Lan cut off both his words and his retreat. I'm not about to let you have second thoughts and disappear. The hospital hallways were always full of people. Between being tall, full of physical grace, and an overall hottie, Jalan Lan generally drew attention to begin with, but publicly touching and grabbing hold of another man quickly drew curious stares from all around. Shen Wei swiftly assessed the situation. "We're in public," he said softly. "Have some discretion, please." Zhao Yunlin responded by turning to glare at the onlookers. "What are you looking at?" he asked, unfazed. "Never seen a couple of hot gay guys before?" Honey. An extremely good joke. However, when your partner wants to go on the down low, maybe in public, sort of, for any reason, not just gay ones, maybe we do that instead of turning around and making yourselves known. I gotta give you points for the punchline, though. That was genuinely funny. Shen Wei and Zhu Hong were both stunned speechless for a moment, and then they spoke almost at the same time. "It's not appropriate for me to be here while you work," Shen Wei said. More quietly, Zhu Hong said, "That's right, Director Zhao. Our internal regulations." "I'm the one who set the regulations," Zhao Yunlan interrupted her. "If I'm unhappy with them, I can change them anytime I want. Besides, what they say is that they... I'm too excited. Besides, what they say is that we need to keep outsiders from witnessing or participating in our investigations. He's not an outsider." Shen Wei froze, momentarily sure that Zhao Yunlan was about to reveal his identity, but instead Zhao Yunlan lowered his voice so that he sounded like an annoying brat. "He's not an outsider. He's my partner." I just don't know. Dumbfounded, me too, Zhu Hong turned away and looked blankly out the window. She had the feeling that she'd just seen the Lord of Incompetence claim his throne. She sent a quick text to the Criminal Investigation Unit back at 4 Bright Avenue. "Hurry, come see the public nuisance at Yellow Cliff Temple Hospital. Don't make me suffer alone." The group answered her summons and swarmed the hospital before dark, but rather than getting to witness anything, they were pressed into service by Zhao Yunlan. "Lao Chu, go to the roof and set down 2 layers of one-way nets in case he makes a break for it. Make sure that once he enters, he can't leave. Shogo, go observe, then write me a report of what you've learned after we wrap things up here. Zhu Hong, set up a surveillance bell on every single door and window in the inpatient department, then section off the space here and establish your own domain. Don't let any random bystanders wander in. Make it neat. Da Qing!" Da Qing and Lin Jing had been busy whispering to each other. "Look at Shen Laoshe's wrist," Lin Jing was saying. "You can see a glimpse of gauze. Our boss is such a beast." Okay. I don't think, handling Zhao Yunlan is going to be difficult enough. I don't think I can take gossip and salacious comments from the team, too. I don't think I'm equipped for that. I don't know what made her think I was. Dutching's eyes went incredibly wide, and his imagination had just started to run wild when he suddenly heard his name. Every molecule of his fat started quivering. "What are you doing, slacking off?" Zhao Yunlan side-eyed him. "Go help, you damn fatty." Shen Wei's hearing transcended that of any mortal. Having overheard the discussion, he stiffly tugged his sleeve down. "As for you," Zhao Yunlan rounded on Lin Jing and pulled a small bottle from his pocket. Lin Jing gulped, gripped by a sudden bad feeling. Zhao Yunlan gave him an evil smile. "Here's some resentment I scraped off one of the victims." In the simplest terms possible, Chu Shu-jia explained it to the rookie who didn't understand shit. Violent spirits are all born from resentment. Picture the spirit like the body of an octopus. It reaches out and curses other people with that resentment, which then acts like the octopus's arms. The spirit can feel each of those people through it. Oh, thank you for the, analogy. Go Cheng Chung had been trailing around after Jalan Lan for some time by then and hadn't yet had a chance to eat supper. Thanks to Chu Shuja's explanation, he couldn't help thinking about takoyaki. His mouth watered and his stomach rumbled noticeably. I'll tell you, takoyaki, one of the dishes that I am actually very, very curious to try someday. I have not had it. This bizarre reaction wasn't at all what Chu Shuja had expected. Zhao Yunlan tossed the bottle to Lin Jing. I'm worried that he won't fall for it tonight, so here's what you're going to do. As soon as it gets dark, get out there, destroy the resentment inside the bottle, and lure the violent spirit into Zhuhong's domain. Silently, Lin Jing looked at Zhao Yunlan and then at the bottle in his own hand. Realizing that he was being baited into becoming a tank to pull aggro, he said, You did this on purpose. Zhao Yunlan didn't bat an eye. Yeah, and? Lin Jing swept his eyes over the others. The black cat wore a crafty sneer, and everyone else's expression was unsympathetic and indifferent. He let himself wallow in sorrow for a moment before wheeling around and flinging himself at Shen Wei, who was leaning unobtrusively against the wall. My liege wishes to sacrifice this humble monk before the flag of battle, he cried. Noble consort, I beg you, intercede on my behalf. Shen Wei didn't have the first clue how to respond. As the sole executing emissary, he was accustomed to people reacting to him like rats spotting a cat. Having never been on the receiving end of teasing like this, he was at a complete loss. He turned to Zhao Yunlan as though asking for help. Zhao Yunlan, on the other hand, was delighted by this high-quality display of ass-kissing. He averted his eyes, showing no interest in intervening. After considering his options, Shen Wei held out his hand for the bottle. I'll go in your place, then. He hadn't even finished speaking before an ominous stare pierced Lin Jing's spine. Even if Lin Jing had been 10 times braver, he wouldn't have dared use the noble consort as bait. The fake monk managed a dry chuckle and tucked the bottle into his own breast pocket. Amitabha, our duty is to encourage goodness, eradicate evil, and protect people's lives and possessions. How could I foist this honorable and arduous calling off on someone else? Off I go. With those words, he darted off at the speed of light. Then how can I help? Shen Wei asked. Zhao Yunlan replied, I know a restaurant a bit south of here that's pretty good. Come eat with me. Once again, Shen Wei had no idea how to react. Zhuhong ground her teeth. I'm angry, but I have to bite my tongue. Chu Shujia fixed his eyes on the ground. Yep, biting my tongue. Da Qing simply meowed. Shen Laoshe, however, had a conscience. We can't do that. How about this? You stay here and give orders, and I'll go hold the gate of life for you. Then, if need be, I can assist. Everyone went dead silent at his words. Zhuhong's brow furrowed and Chu Shujia's face turned pensive, but Go Chang Chung, the only one confused, piped up. What's a gate of life? Chu Shujia ignored the question. Expression serious, he asked, How did Shen Laoshe know what kind of array I'll be putting down? 2 layers with 4 gates each. Anything that enters is unable to exit. I could extrapolate as much from seeing the places Yunlan pointed out just now for monitoring. However, if the violent spirit's resentment is too thick and heavy, he could tear through the temporary net. At that point, if the gate of life becomes a gate of death, it'll be hard to control. I'll guard the eye of the array, just in case. Chu Shujia looked him up and down. Shen Laoshe knows all of this, even though you're just a university professor? I've picked up a few things. Shen Wei nodded politely at everyone, then addressed Zhao Yunlan. I'll be going then. You be careful. With a feeling of deep satisfaction, Zhao Yunlan watched him leave. Hate to see you go. Zhuhong and Chu Shujia turned toward Zhao Yunlan in unison, faces full of confusion. Da Qing stood up on a chair by the window on his hind legs to watch as Shen Wei walked out of the hospital and unerringly took his position on the gate of life. As though feeling the cat's gaze, Shen Wei looked up and smiled at him. Da Qing's eyes flashed. A master. Very quietly, Zhuhong asked, Director Zhao, who exactly is Shen Laoshe? Zhao Yunlan, now in an excellent mood, half-jokingly said, You don't want me to answer that. Da Qing's dark green gaze shifted to him. Does that mean you know what you're doing? Zhao Yunlan leaned back lazily in his chair. When have I ever not? I just think it's weird, said Zhuhong. First, when the reincarnation dial appeared, he was there. And then with the Mountain River All, we just happened to run into him when we were heading to the mountains. Dragon City is so big that I don't even know all my neighbors. I can't believe that was all coincidental. Doesn't it seem planned to you, Director Zhao? To be honest, yes. There's a story behind it all. Zhao Yunlan chose his words carefully, but I don't think he'd want anyone else to know, so I'm afraid I can't say more than that right now. An icy weight settled on Zhuhong's chest. If Shen Wei were some ordinary person, she, Lin Jing, and the others could amuse themselves and kill time gossiping about him and Zhao Yunlan. She could even tease and laugh at their boss, or go as far as writing smutty scenarios about him on Weibo! But the revelation that Shen Wei's nature was more aligned with theirs made her uncomfortable, as if she'd suddenly been stabbed in the heart with a long, thin needle. The blood dripping from that wound reeked of jealousy. What is Shen Losha master of? Making a raise? Chu Shuzhou was curious. When he's free, can we have a chat? Da Qing's tail flicked up. A little worried, he said, You're getting yourself tangled up with someone who isn't an ordinary human. Even if you don't want to go into detail, could you at least tell us which side your friend is on? With the three of them grilling him, it was as if Zhao Yunlan had found a sugar daddy, not a partner. His fleeting patience finally evaporated. With an impatient wave, he said, What's with the interrogation? Did I say this was a press conference? Get to work. Zhuhong wanted to say more, but Da Qing had already jumped down from the chair and meowed at her from a few steps away. She could only sigh in resignation as her fist, hidden in her sleeve, clenched even tighter. She caught up with Da Qing without another word. Zhao Yunlan noticed the subtle hostility radiating from her, but that didn't strike him as strange. Zhuhong had always been careful and meticulous, and he'd brought Shen Wei, a complete stranger, into their little circle without warning or explanation. Of course she'd be uneasy. To show her that he understood, Zhao Yunlan called after her. Hey, wait! Zhuhong's footsteps paused. I want to respect Shen Wei's wishes, he explained, so I really can't say much, but there's no need to be concerned about him, so don't worry. Just treat him exactly like you'd treat me. Treat him exactly the same, my ass. Zhuhong stalked out without replying, thinking about how badly she wanted to slap a certain jackass named Zhao. End of the chapter. We are on page 81 for chapter 7. At last, darkness fell over the city. High up on the roof, the wind whistled strongly. It had made a mess of Chu Shuzhou's hair. He was so tremendously thin that he resembled human jerky, as though he'd be a stringy mouthful if you took a bite. Unable to shake the feeling that Chu Shuzhou might be blown off the roof at any moment, Go Chengcheng kept glancing over to check on him. Go Chengcheng himself was immobilized with fear. There was cinnabar all over the rooftop beneath his feet. Chu Shuzhou had used the cinnabar to turn the rooftop into a gigantic talisman, drawing on its surface as if it were a huge piece of yellow paper, and then pinned down the 8 positions with black stones. From where he stood at the center of the giant talisman, Go Chengcheng immediately felt the atmosphere shift. The night wind carried a particular smell, one he couldn't quite describe. It was sticky and wet, but not unpleasant, despite the tang of mud and blood. A barely perceptible thread of bitterness wound through it. Go Chengcheng took a whiff, feeling a little lost. Chuge? That's the smell of a resentful spirit. Chu Shuzhou didn't look up. Within the wide net that had been set up, the light color of Shen Wei's coat was starkly visible. He was standing precisely in the net closing position. Who did Director Zhao manage to ensnare this time? Chu Shuzhou murmured. I've never heard of anyone by that name. Shen Wei seemed to look up, but it was too dark for Chu Shuzhou to see his face. A moment later he vanished from sight, and Chu Shuzhou's expression turned serious. It's here. Huh? Said Go Chengcheng. This isn't the time for huh. Chu Shuzhou stalked over and stuck a yellow paper talisman to Go Chengcheng's face. Shut your mouth and keep quiet. The distinctive pungent smell intensified. Down on the ground in the northeast corner, Lin Jing stuffed his phone back into his pocket and twisted open the little bottle expressionlessly. A cloud of putrid black smoke rose into the air. Lin Jing looked up and made a Vajra seal with his hands. The look on his face was intensely focused, almost divine. However, despite Zhao Yunlan's instructions, he didn't immediately kill it. Instead, he began quietly chanting scriptures that would grant the soul transcendence. After all, it was a soul that had once been born and raised by the heavens and earth. It had been born into existence from the essence of all things. It might have only experienced a few lives so far, or it might have already been through countless reincarnations. Lin Jing didn't have it in him to uphold the law with the same violent efficiency as Jalan Lan. But the low chanting of scriptures was like casting pearls before swine. The resentment had grievances to address. How could it bear to listen to such tedious nagging? It responded by swelling and expanding monstrously in the air until it blotted out the moon and stars. It roared at the sky. Just then, 3 gunshots shattered the quiet of the night. They shredded the flimsy strand of resentment, and it faded away. A window on the 6th floor had been pushed open from inside. Lin Jing spotted the flicker of a flame. It was all too easy to envision Zhao Yunlan's furrowed brow and commanding expression as he holstered his gun and grumbled, "All those scriptures have rotted your brain." But it wasn't over. The wind carried a distant roar of fury to their ears. Lin Jing pressed his hands together with a silent Amitabha, then backflipped up into the naked branches of a nearby tree. A huge black cloud of smoke struck the spot where he'd just been standing, shattering the tidy tiles and thrusting the shards into the air. A massive figure appeared within the reeking wind. It was at least 4 or 5 meters tall and appeared human, but only the top half. A bit of protruding bone was all that remained of its legs. Blackish blood trailed behind the figure as it approached. The ground sizzled and melted wherever the blood touched. The being seemed ready to destroy all who stood in its way, even God or Buddha himself. Lin Jing laughed dryly, but his steps never faltered. He leapt up and grabbed the ledge of a 2nd-floor window. Like a gigantic spider, he raced up the side of the building, using the jutting window ledges and tiny handholds in the wall. He ascended faster than an elevator, with the black shadow close behind him. When he reached the 6th floor, Lin Jing yelled to the black cat at the window, "Catch it!" Da Qing pounced. 6 bells, each hanging in its own window, began to toll in perfect unison. Zhuhong cried out, and an immense python slithered out into the fray, curling its tongue and swallowing a cloud of the black smoke. Happy Halloween. The shadow pursuing Lin Jing battered indiscriminately at everything in reach. The ringing of the bells came faster and faster as the python continued drawing the black smoke from the resentful spirit into its mouth. Bit by bit, the shadow shrank. Eventually, the shadow hanging in the air was almost completely gone, and the man hidden within was revealed. It was the person Guo Chengcheng had seen outside the hospital window, with salt and pepper hair and red eyes. Zhao Yunlan abruptly stubbed out his cigarette on the windowsill. "Zhuhong, move!" The moment he spoke, the 6 clanging bells stilled and fell silent. Every window on the 6th floor had been blown out entirely. The tremendous python settled to the floor and was a woman once more, while the maimed man immediately grew dramatically. Zhao Yunlan leaned over and grabbed Zhuhong, only 2 or 3 meters from the resentful spirit floating outside. "Soul guarding order." Zhao Yunlan narrowed his eyes. In a voice like ice, he said, "After your death, you didn't go find a place to reincarnate. Instead, you emerged during New Year's to poison people. Why?" The words New Year's seemed to set the resentful spirit off. One huge, smoke-shrouded hand made a grab for Zhao Yunlan's neck. The soul-guarding order transmuted into a whip like a live vine. It lashed out from Zhao Yunlan's sleeve and coiled around that huge hand, leaving human and ghost deadlocked on a pile of shattered glass. Zhuhong gave Lin Jing a forceful shove. "Are you blind? Go help!" Lin Jing hadn't caught his breath after his Spider-Man impression, and his fingers hurt from all the climbing. "Help! Help! Help how? Look at the size of that thing! You have way too much confidence in me. What can I do?" "Ring the bell!" Zhuhong snapped. "You have to ring the bell every day. That's what monks do, right?" Her yelling made Lin Jing's ears ring. "Miss Benefactor, can you please calm down?" he pleaded. "I'm just an uninitiated monk. Have you ever seen an uninitiated monk ring the bell every day? Besides, my Buddha may be merciful, but he has dominion over occult things. That spirit was human before he died, so the bell can only affect him so much. You think it can deal with resentful energy that even you couldn't swallow?" "I don't care," she said. "Just hurry and think of something." Lin Jing glanced in Zhao Yunlan's direction and gave a deep, helpless sigh. Why didn't Buddha, in his infinite mercy, make this disciple just a little bit hotter too? Absolutely not. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, palm-sized vessel that shaped like a teapot. When he lifted the lid, the aroma of fragrant oil wafted out. Lin Jing appeared inside, clearly reluctant. But just as he was about to pour it, Zhao Yunlan waved at him. It was like the boss had eyes in the side of his head. "Save your lamp oil. You're not needed here." He'd barely spoken when the resentful spirit managed to struggle free of the soul-guarding whip. The whip rose high, wavered, and then silently withdrew back into Zhao Yunlan's sleeve. Roaring, the resentful spirit tore through the window frames and began to squeeze its way into the hospital hallway. The opening of the window seemed about to burst at any moment. In response, Zhao Yunlan took a single step back. He extended both arms in front of himself, parallel to the floor with his palms facing out, fingers spread, with a short knife in his right hand. "Art!" He silently sliced across his left palm. Fresh blood flowed into the groove of the blade and immediately congealed. Relevant art, we might say. Very nice. Creepy ghoul in the background notwithstanding. Like, how it's, I might be giving myself away a little bit here. Off to the side, Da Qing saw what was happening. Fur bristling, he sprang into Zhu Hong's arms. The smile that spread across Zhao Yunlan's face bore no resemblance to his normal smile. In that moment, his eyes seemed unusually deep. His warm gaze had turned cold. His tall nose cast a shadow across his face in the darkness. There was an eerie, indescribable malice in the curl of his lips. "Netherworld realms, heed my command." The resounding and faintly hoarse voice that emerged didn't sound like Zhao Yunlan's either. Hearing it felt rather like being grated by a dull saw might. "With blood sworn and cold iron as witness, 3,000 ghost soldiers I call. Perish, foes, though mortal or god, any may fall by their blades." There was a perceptible pause after each syllable as he spoke the last few words. The congealed blood on the blade turned black, and countless armored soldiers began to pour from the pale white wall behind him. Mounted on war horses of white bone and dragging rotting weapons, they surged forth like an indomitable force of nature. With a great battle cry, they clashed with the massive, resentful spirit. All the strength seemed to have drained out of Zhao Yunlan. He stumbled back and leaned on the wall behind him, ignoring everyone's terrified gaze. He shook his still bleeding hand and said, short of breath, "I still got a little blood on my sleeve. Will dry cleaning get it out?" I'm feeling particularly attacked this Halloween Eve. Very carefully, Da Qing asked, "Yunlan?" Zhao Yunlan raised a brow. That expression was all too familiar. This was the Zhao Yunlan who was always in need of good swipe. With no further hesitation, Da Qing reached out and smacked him. "What the fuck was that? I never taught you this kind of sorcery." Zhao Yunlan said smugly, "Humans can read, dumb cat." Da Qing jumped to stand on Zhao Yunlan's thighs, forepaws on the human's shoulders. Right in Zhao Yunlan's face, he bellowed, "What exactly did you take out of the library?" Zhao Yunlan patted the cat's head with his good hand and scratched his chin. Da Qing reflexively closed his eyes and started to purr. "Soul book," Zhao Yunlan said. "Don't worry, I'm not studying sorcery. I was researching something else and stumbled on this. The urgency of the situation made me think of it just now. I wasn't planning on doing anything. Don't you have any faith in my good character?" Cursing his kitty instincts, the black cat gave his head a forceful shake to dislodge Zhao Yunlan's hand. "Good character? Do you even possess such a thing?" Cat spit sprayed Zhao Yunlan's face. But having said that, Daching jumped down to the floor with a huff, grudgingly accepting the explanation. He trusted Zhao Yunlin to not go too far, but he wasn't happy about it. If you want your ugly mugshot to show up on the Netherworld's wanted list for everyone to see, then I have nothing to say. He hadn't fully gotten the sentence out before Zhao Yunlin grabbed him from behind and pinned him to the floor. Whose picture is ugly, you necklace fat cat? That was when Chu Shujie phoned from the roof. He'd been all too happy to watch the chaos unfold and was vibrating from head to toe with uncharacteristic excitement. Was that the ghost army just now? Who summoned them? Are they crazy? That was so fucking hot! No! Not Chu Shujie, of all people, being us about it. Oh, that's so good. That was more than Zhuhong could take. She hung up on him. Finally catching his breath, Lin Jing butted in. Is the ghost army summoned with blood? Blood and iron are both mediums. Zhao Yunlin straightened up, dusting himself off. What's actually doing the summoning is malice. Since malice is so sinister, I think it's a form of fighting fire with fire. Zhuhong hesitated for a moment, then edged closer. You have malice in your heart? What, am I not human? Zhao Yunlin chuckled and answered readily. Of course I do. Loads of it. To be honest, I don't think the ghost army summon should count as sorcery at all. It's great stuff, like mental yoga. Gives you a good detox and leaves your whole body relaxed. I can't hit anything anymore. I used to hit my bookshelf, and then I got a background, and now I can't hit it anymore. And I can't hit the fucking desk because my tripod's on the desk, and if I hit it, you won't see me anymore. So I can't do anything. God damn it. Oh. Zhuhong was too stunned to reply, but Daching jumped onto Zhao Yunlan's shoulder and punched him in the nose. Oh, damn fatty, Zhao Yunlan hollered. The ghost army had driven the resentful spirit into a corner. Realizing he wouldn't be able to get anything out of the situation, he decided that escape was the best course of action. The array Chu Shujie had set up outside activated at once. A bolt of lightning that had been waiting in the skies all that time was suddenly unleashed. The ghost army chasing the spirit disappeared at the same moment, leaving the resentful spirit pinned in place by the lightning. He began to struggle violently in a giant net of electricity. Quakes rocked the ground beneath the hospital. From the roof, Chu Shujie yelled, "Don't let him get away!" Shen Wei, who had vanished some time ago, reappeared out of nowhere behind the resentful spirit. He reached out and closed a hand around thin air. It was as if an invisible hand was tightening around the spirit's neck. The black miasma dispersed little by little, revealing a legless man staring in Shen Wei's direction with utter hatred. Unmoved, Shen Wei tightened his fingers. The spirit crumpled like a piece of paper in his hand and was gone. Not Zhao Yunlan being hot all over the place, just raining the chapter. And then motherfucking Shen Wei coming in at literally the last 2 sentences of the chapter and stealing his man's thunder like that. Just swept it right out from under him. Are you kidding? Power couples, I swear to God. We are on page 91 for chapter 8. Let me do some page math real quick. Let me check and see if we should be kind of taking an early break, maybe? It's a little bit longer of a chapter than usual. So just so that we don't have to like stop in the middle of a chapter because, you know, God knows what's gonna go down. We're going to go ahead and take the break a little bit early. I am going to go make some tea. This is your cue to get up, walk around, go get some tea of your own. Do you have anything like, do you have any special foodstuffs for Halloween? Do you have any like candy laying around, or have you like baked cookies or something? Or bought cookies? Store-bought's fine. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't think we have anything. The wife tried to make a pumpkin loaf bread thing yesterday because she carved a pumpkin. and she had the leftovers and she tried to make a loaf of bread and it didn't go very well. So we tried to have something pumpkin-y for Halloween and then that didn't exactly pan out. We should probably get something for this evening. You know? Even if it's like a pumpkin pie. Like who Anyway, I'm gonna go leave her a message about that while I get some more tea. And when we come back, we will be on, once again, reminder, why did I close the book? Page 91 for chapter 8 to see more ridiculousness. Alrighty. I shall return. Welcome back. So, although speaking of which, there are a couple of you in the chat in the comments who are talking about like brown whipped butter to go on toast and like chai chocolate chip cookies. I simply need you to be linking me to recipes in the comments, please. That is a humble request from me this Halloween, because that sounds. Of course, someone's also got pizza. Like, I'm envious. I'm so jealous. The wife and I are definitely have to do something when I get off the stream today. 1000%. What kind of Halloween is it without some kind of special fun food? You know, how did we look over this? It's just that time of year. So, we are on page 91. Page 91 for chapter 8. I have no idea. Ninan has just brought up a drink called sencha. I have no idea what that is. I am now writing that down so I can check that out later. Get the setup properly. Thank you. So that I'm looking at all the right things. With their target apprehended, the domain Zhuhong had established automatically faded away. The glass shards on the floor reassembled themselves into intact windows. Inside the hospital, there was still an endless stream of nurses making the nightly rounds and patients coming to the emergency room. The street vendor outside the entrance had already packed up their wares. The occasional taxi hurried past, clearly not on the lookout for customers. The peacefulness of the night might have never been broken at all. Shen Wei raced up to the 6th floor, arriving at the same moment as Chu Shujie, who was coming down from the roof. Chu Shujie's arrogance was rooted in his confidence in his abilities. He was civil enough with people he knew, but rarely bothered paying attention to strangers. Now, though, he addressed Shen Wei warmly. "You did a beautiful job of holding the eye of the array." Shen Wei offered a hurried nod of greeting, but his expression was even more tense than someone about to be operated on for acute appendicitis. He took out a small bottle and gave it to Chu Shujie. "The spirit isn't here. Keep a close eye on it." Then his attention turned to Jalan Lan. "Come with me. We need to talk." He dragged Jalan Lan into a bathroom and locked the door. Staring at Jalan Lan in the dim light, he quietly asked, "Was that the ghost army just now?" "Yeah." "Was it you?" Jalan Lan nodded, not even trying to deny it. "Who else?" Shen Wei's lips set into a sharp, straight line. "Who taught you the ghost army summons?" Again, Jalan Lan's answer was forthright. "I happened to read it in a book in the Soul Guarding Order library." Shen Wei wordlessly raised a hand and aimed it at Jalan Lan's face, but couldn't bear to actually strike him. His hand stopped dangerously close, his palm near Jalan Lan's ear. Jalan Lan froze. "Shen Wei?" "Don't talk to me." Shen Wei was pale with fury. His hand, still held in midair, trembled. "Perish, foes, though mortal or god, any may fall by their blades." The Guardian's power must defy description. What mad arrogance! Don't you fear punishment from the heavens? Jalan Lan had rarely seen Shen Wei or the soul-executing emissary show true anger. He quickly caught hold of Shen Wei's ice-cold hands and apologized first. The rest be damned. "You're absolutely right. I was wrong. If you want to hit me, go ahead. Don't be mad, okay? Don't be mad." Shen Wei shook him off. "Do you think this is a joke? Are you somehow unaware that gathering souls with the ghost army summons is utterly forbidden sorcery? Do you even understand what sorcery is? Do you imagine the 3 realms are beneath you? With such disregard for the heavens, will nothing satisfy you but to tear the sky asunder? When that happens, you'll—" He broke off abruptly. When he could finally speak again, he took half a step back. "When that happens, what am I to do?" he asked. Voice shaking. Jalan Lan's heart ached for him. He reached out to pull Shen Wei into his arms. "I was wrong, babe. I'm sorry. I don't know why that babe is taking me out. It's not like they've done 10 million things that aren't 10 million times gayer, and yet here I am. My life's just been ended by a babe. I'm normal about it. He thought his apology was appropriately sincere, but the words triggered something in Shen Wei. Shen Wei shoved him away, pinning him against the door with one hand and grabbing his collar brutally with the other. Don't try to fool me the same way you fooled who knows how many others. Oh, all right. We're definitely angry right now. Oh, we are we are upset. Okay. Zhao Yunlan gave a helpless sigh. I'll just stop talking then. With no more warning than that, he leaned in to ambush Shen Wei's icy lips. What? What do you mean? What? Oh, no, sorry. I'll just stop talking then. God. Happy Halloween. Caught off guard, Shen Wei instinctively pulled back, but warm hands came up to cradle his face. Zhao Yunlan seized the opportunity to force his lips open. Shen Wei was overwhelmed by a refreshing scent of mint. His anger and reason crumbled. All he could see was a chaotic swirl. He couldn't even process it when Zhao Yunlan ended the kiss. Zhao Yunlan calmly removed Shen Wei's hand from his collar before Shen Wei regained the ability to think. Shen Wei stared blankly at him, face completely red. Eyes crinkling, Zhao Yunlan gave him a smile. He reached up and mimed zipping his own mouth closed to indicate that he wasn't talking. Looking down at Shen Wei, he then swiped his thumb across his lips and licked it lightly. Shen Wei was too embarrassed to know where to look. Swinging Shen Wei's hand with his own injured one, Zhao Yunlan drew Shen Wei's attention to how the cut on his palm was already starting to scab over. The shocking crimson of it made Shen Wei's eyes sting. He carefully lifted Zhao Yunlan's hand. Bright white light covered and sank into the wounded palm, and the cut began to close. In an instant, the skin was perfect and unbroken. Shen Wei hauled him to the sink to rinse the blood away. Does it hurt? Zhao Yunlan didn't say anything. Left with no other choice, Shen Wei said, You can speak. It does hurt, said Zhao Yunlan. Shen Wei's brows furrowed as Zhao Yunlan continued. My back hurts. So does my chest. You actually got angry at me. You're the soul of courtesy to everyone else, but you got angry at me. You won't even let me talk. How could you make me so sad? His words were punctuated with a pout. Shen Wei, not realizing Zhao Yunlan was trying to be cute, mumbled, I didn't mean to. Zhao Yunlan looked up at him expressionlessly. Just as Shen Wei was starting to panic a little, Zhao Yunlan reached up and tapped his own lips. Kiss me again. Coax your forgiveness from here. Okay, hang on. God. Oh, hang on. One second. One moment. It's still too hot to drink. The tea's still too hot to drink. Okay. We're going to get a running start into that again. It's fine. It's whatever. Zhao Yunlan reached up and tapped his own lips. Kiss me again. Coax your forgiveness from your lord's lips. Shen Wei's face went blank, and his ears turned scarlet. He immediately turned to leave. How shameless. But he looked back upon reaching the door, realizing that Zhao Yunlan hadn't followed him, or indeed, moved at all. Zhao Yunlan was still right where Shen Wei had left him, leaning against the wall, looking at him with something that might have been a smile. Shen Wei was already touching the lock on the door, but after another moment's hesitation, he seemed to accept his fate. He returned and kissed Zhao Yunlan, hands on Zhao Yunlan's waist. If he was already so thoroughly wrapped around Zhao Yunlan's little finger, how would he fare in the future? That's a scene break. Yeah, the tea was supposed to help not cough. And here we are. Alright. Also, in Shen Wei's defense, he's not like already wrapped around Jalan Lan. I feel like he's, been in that current state when it comes to Jalan Lan for a very long time. It's only recently that he's been able to do anything about it, so it's really understandable there. Jesus Christ. Did I say that was a scene break? I legitimately don't remember. That's a scene break. When the team returned to 4 Bright Avenue, Chu Shuja set up an escape-proof net outside the interrogation room. Only once the place was bristling with yellow paper talismans strung up like Tibetan prayer flags did he go inside and lock the door, open the little bottle, and release the resentful spirit. Jalan Lan got a chair for Shen Wei and lit a cigarette before lazily addressing the spirit. You have the right to remain silent. Every word you say from here on out will be used as evidence in court, so think carefully before you open your mouth. 3 spirit talismans ensured that the legless, resentful spirit couldn't leave the ground. The look on his face was sinister as he asked, Evidence in court? What court? What evidence? You testify to all your merits and sins before the Yanlo courts, which are fair and just, Chu Shuja snapped. Enough bullshit. Speak only when spoken to. The spirit gave a cold laugh. Chu Shuja shot a sidelong glance at Go Chang Chung, who immediately sat up straight and looked down at his palm, which he turned into a cheat sheet by writing all over it. As though reciting from a book, he began, name, age, time of death, cause of death. The resentful spirit's gaze fell on Go Chang Chung, eliciting another shiver of fright. Chu Shuja put a hand on Go Chang Chung's shoulder. Lin Jing slammed his hands down on the table. What are you looking at? He demanded viciously. Hurry up and answer. Wang Shenyang, age 62. I died last year on the 29th day of the 12th lunar month when I was hit by a car. That explains the lack of legs. Go Chang Chung gave Chu Shuja a careful glance, then looked back down at his cheat sheet when Chu Shuja nodded. Chu Shuja, brimming with curiosity, followed his gaze. The text crammed onto Go Chang Chung's hand read, it has XXX and the name in parentheses, so it's a little bit difficult to articulate. If your cause of death was, insert cause of death here, why did you harm innocent people? Stammering, Go Chang Chung began, Wang Shenyang, your cause of death was actually the 29th day of the 12th lunar month. I mean a car. Why did you harm innocent people? Chu Shuja barely managed to contain his laughter by turning aside and coughing dryly into his hand. Innocent? Wang Shenyang's voice was just above a whisper. Who's innocent? How about you tell me, little brat, who's innocent? Them? Are you innocent? The culprit got to ask questions too? Go Chang Chung wasn't remotely prepared for this development. He could only sit there in bewilderment. Fortunately, the kind Shen Lao-she cut in and came to his rescue. Can you describe the accident? When Wang Shenyang only eyed him silently, he continued, How are the people you cursed connected? What does it have to do with selling oranges? I was just a peddler before I died, Wang Shenyang answered eventually. I lived in a village on the outskirts of Dragon City. Every day I brought seasonal fruits into the city to sell. My entire family depended on that income. My wife had uremia, so she couldn't work. Our son was almost 30, but he couldn't find a wife, and I couldn't afford to buy him a house in the city. Since you had to ask, I don't mind sharing. The corners of Wang Shenyang's mouth pulled up into a sneer. When he lowered his head, he looked no different from any ordinary human at a quick glance. I love those few days just before and after the Lunar New Year. All those who've moved to the city return to their hometowns for the holiday, so the city gets nice and quiet. And since people have nowhere to shop and everything in the stores is so expensive, business is always a little better than usual for me. The 29th day of the last lunar month is always such a wonderful day. Last year, the final lunar month was only 29 days long, so Lunar New Year's Eve fell on that day. The city had lifted the ban on firecrackers and fireworks. There were these two boys, maybe around 10. Rich kids in their expensive clothes with no discipline at all. They had firecrackers stuffed into their pockets and were throwing them into the road under people's feet. They nearly burst one of my tires. I was so cold I wasn't thinking straight, so I caved and scolded them a little. One of the brats threw firecrackers at me while the other one snuck behind me and pushed my cart over. All my oranges and apples went rolling everywhere. That cart of fruit was supposed to get my family through the new year. I panicked and tried to pick it all up. It was the middle of the day. Lots of people were passing by. I kept saying, "Please be kind, help me out." But one guy picked up an orange and peeled it without even looking at me. He just ate it, and he said, "Your stuff's all covered in dirt now, so who's going to buy it? Why bother picking it up? Just share it with the rest of us." And he wasn't the only one. A bunch of people saw and simply grabbed what they wanted. Some even brought bags. I said, "You can't do this. You have to pay. You can't just take my fruit." But they all ignored me and left with it. When I tried to chase after them, I was hit by a taxi. It was snowing heavily that day, and there was ice on the road, so the taxi couldn't stop in time. The driver slammed on the brakes, but it skidded several meters and rolled right over me. My upper body rolled along with the wheels, leaving my legs behind, and in the last second of my life, a stray orange hit me in the face. That's cruel and unusual. Well, don't you think I died unjustly? A dead silence filled the interrogation room. "Should I not take my revenge?" Wang Shengyang asked. "Is it right of you to arrest me? Even if I go to the netherworld, how should the Yanlo courts judge me?" No wonder each victim's karmic line was so faint. Wang Shengyang looked quite frightening as he leaned back in his chair. "When I was alive, I had no clue that there were people like you specifically in charge of stuff like this. If it's your job to deal with injustice, why am I in here, not them?" Go Cheng-chung read over the hint he'd written for himself. "Family. Friends." "Won't you at least think of your descendants?" he blurted. "Don't you want to accumulate some merits for your son, your grandson, and your wife, who's sick right now?" Indifferently, Wang Shengyang replied, "My son didn't marry, so I don't have grandchildren. Anyway, they're both dead already. The Wang family is finished. What son of a bitch should I collect merits for?" Go Cheng-chung went utterly still. "Dead? How did they die?" "I killed them. My house is out at... I'm stunned. My house is out in the country and doesn't have heating, so we had to keep the little stove going for warmth. I floated back home in the middle of the night and covered the fire in the coal stove so it couldn't ventilate. They died in their sleep." Wang Shengyang paused, then added, "It was painless. Now they're on their merry way to their next life. How nice." How could you do that? The look Wang Shengyang gave him was calm. "I think living is more painful than death, wouldn't you agree?" Why hadn't Lin Jing been able to help Wang Shengyang let go of his resentment? Because he had never done anything evil when he was alive. He'd spent half of his life working diligently only to meet a tragic and absurd end. If someone was absolutely filled with hatred, there was no room left in their heart for any tenderness at all. Once he had personally severed his only connection to this world, nothing remained that could call forth even a trace of longing or kindness in him. If he were still alive, perhaps the passage of time and wisdom gained along the way could have lessened the hatred in his heart. Perhaps new comforts would have allowed him to live out the rest of his days. But he was already dead, and, having lost his life, he no longer cared for anything. His soul was forever stuck in that moment when he lost his life under the wheels and gave in to obsession. To Jalan Lan's mind, it wasn't an easy situation. On the one hand, pocketing some fruit on the roadside was immoral, but did those who did it deserve to die? Even being caught stealing someone else's wallet would, at most, result in a thief being sent to a holding cell. They couldn't just be shot on the spot. On the other hand, those people's greed had caused the death of this good, honest man who'd been looking forward to going home for the new year. Why shouldn't he hate them? Why shouldn't he exact revenge? What was that I said in a previous stream about how I really don't want to fucking hear it anymore? About queer love stories just being all about stupid drama and shallow sex? Just self-indulgent pandering mess. That stuff. It was Shen Wei who spoke first. Those who seize what they want without permission are thieves, whether it's gold and silver or a handful of fruit. Theft is theft, and to cause another person to lose their life in the course of it, I believe they are as guilty as someone committing murder for personal gain. There's a debate. Intentionality is what separates it for me, but there's a debate. As soon as Shen Wei had opened his mouth, it was too late for Jalan Lan to stop him. However he appeared at the moment, he was still the soul-executing emissary. Legend said that the soul-executing blade had come into existence even before the reincarnation cycle was established. Shit. Now that he had spoken, not even the Yanlo courts could overturn his verdict. With those few words, Shen Wei had essentially sanctioned Wang Shengyong's revenge. As Shen Wei spoke, Wang Shengyong felt the power restraining him melt away. However, Shen Wei continued, even if you were to let them go, the consequences of their evil would catch up with them down the road. If they died before that happened, justice might come in their next life instead. You were once simply a mortal soul, but having lost yourself in hatred, you've become a resentful spirit. You've committed heinous acts, such as killing your wife and son. Even if I give you leave to seek revenge, you might ultimately still be imprisoned in the 18 levels of hell. Are you certain you'll have no regrets? Other than Jalan Lan, Wang Shengyong was the first to recognize that Shen Wei was unlike everyone else present. After studying Shen Wei for a while, he said decisively, I won't. Shen Wei turned to Jalan Lan, feigning earnestness. How should he be dealt with, then? You've already dealt with it. What are you asking me for? Jalan Lan glared at him, then coughed lightly. He still had to help Shen Wei maintain his cover, so he took a soul-guarding order from his pocket, slapped it down on the interrogation table, and slid it in front of Wang Shengyong. Before daybreak, a reaper will come to collect you. Give them this and tell them to take you to the Yanlo courts for a travel pass. Wang Shengyong accepted the soul-guarding order with both hands. Let me just reiterate what he said, Jalan Lan added. With the travel pass, you'll be able to indulge your hatred for a while, but you will be punished many times over in the future. Before you act, make sure you think things through. You don't need to remind me. I've already killed more than 10 people. There's no turning back. Wang Shengyong shook his head, then smiled bitterly. I never imagined that even after death there would still be a place for me to plead my case. Thank you. Everyone in the room was shocked. Wait, Zhuheng said. More than 10 people? You're sure? They're all definitely dead? Of course they are, Wang Shengyong replied frankly. Gruesome deaths for all of them, and not a single one will ever be able to reincarnate. Damn, baby, that's cold. Zhuheng gave Jalan Lan a shocked and uncertain look. Thanks to the exploding population and hectic pace of society, it wouldn't be surprising for them to miss a death here and there if evil spirits wreaked havoc in the mortal realm. But as soon as it was more than one or two, it wasn't only the soul-guarding order that should have noticed. Even individual mortal sects in the city with just a trace of cultivation should have picked up on the escalating evil. But they hadn't. If Wang Shengyong hadn't volunteered the information, not a single one of them would have known he already had the blood of more than 10 souls on his hands. Shen Wei immediately thought of the merit brush. Did you make use of some method to alter your merits? Of course, Wang Shengyong admitted without hesitation. Right after I poisoned my wife and son and was about to go after my first target, someone found me and offered me a deal. What deal was that? He said that if I just started killing without reservation, I'd quickly be noticed by those who maintain order between the mortal realm and the netherworld, so he sold me a charm. He said if I wore it around my neck, you guys wouldn't be able to detect me. In exchange, he wanted the souls of the people I killed, explained Wang Shengyong. I have no use for the souls, and I'm already dead, so he had nothing to gain from tricking me. I agreed and found out he told me the truth. No one bothered me at all. Those people all thought they had some weird illness. Jiao Lan asked, "Did you see if there was anything written or drawn on the charm?" "Yes," Wang Shengyang said. "My name and birth chart. At first, the ink from his brush was black, and then it became red. The black words were written on the inside, then circled in red." As he spoke, he lifted a small octagonal yellow paper talisman hanging around his neck. "This is it." "Oh, hey, octagonal. Someone in the chat just got a shout out. "This is it here. Feel free to take a look." Chu Shuzhe took it and opened it up. As Wang Shengyang had said, it contained a line of words circled in red. But before anyone could take a closer look, the talisman burst into flames and turned to ash. Shen Wei's one quick glance wasn't enough for him to be sure whose handwriting it was, but from Wang Shengyang's description, it was almost certainly the merit brush. One's wrongdoings were recorded in black, while red ink recorded good deeds. No matter if you were tremendously kind or horrifically evil, or if you were a corrupt traitor or unshakably loyal, a single stroke of the brush could wipe it all away. Legend said that the merit brush's handle had been carved from the roots of a tree growing out of the Huangquan. The wood was incredibly hard, difficult to cut even with a steel knife, but the tree had no branches or leaves, no flowers or fruit. It was known as the ancient merit tree. Shen Wei sometimes thought that this tree was dead but not yet born, mocked the so-called merit system of the three realms, where people did good out of a desire to accrue merits and forsook evil only to avoid punishment. If everyone was ultimately driven by self-interest, what was the point in differentiating between good and evil? We're asking some questions. "What did this person look like?" Jiao Lan said. "Where did you encounter him?" Wang Shengyang gave it some thought. He just looked ordinary. "It's strange. Now that you're asking, I suddenly can't remember. As for where..." He paused, pinching his brow. "My memory's gone all hazy, but it must have been near my house. I live in West Plum Village, 10 kilometers west of the city. You can check it out if you wish." Shen Wei stood up and nodded at him. Many thanks." Calmly, Wang Shengyang said, "I should be thanking all of you. I have nothing to hide about those murders. Talking about them is fine. Ask all the questions you like." Shen Wei left the interrogation room ahead of everyone else. Jiao Lan gave Lin Jing's shoulder a quick pat. "Tell the Reaper to come, and when they get here, explain the situation. The Netherworld will know how to handle it." Having said that, he followed Shen Wei out. Shen Wei was waiting at the end of the hallway. They went into Jiao Lan's office, and Jiao Lan closed the door behind them before asking, "What, you think it's the merit brush?" "I can't be entirely certain," Shen Wei said, "but it's very likely. Even if it proves to be a fake, it must have been made by someone who knows the four hallowed artifacts like the back of their hand." Jiao Lan rubbed his chin. "What are you thinking?" asked Shen Wei. Jiao Lan was about to reply when the shadow of a skeleton puppet flickered outside the window. He went over to the window and opened it to let the puppet in. The puppet lowered its skull to him in an awkward bow, then went straight to Shen Wei's side, where it transformed into a note and gently came to rest in Shen Wei's hand. Still by the window, Jiao Lan glanced up at the impenetrable and distant night sky. He had the unsettling feeling that there were eyes watching him. I can speak. He had the unsettling feeling that there were eyes watching him from out in the darkness. Shen Wei's expression went dark as his gaze swept across the paper. "Something came up?" Jiao Lan asked. "Yes, urgent business. I have to go." In a heartbeat, the refined university professor became the sole executing emissary, enveloped from head to toe in an icy chill. As he hurried out the window, he made sure to tell Jiao Lan, "You absolutely cannot go alone to that West Plum village he mentioned. No matter what, wait for my return." When Jiao Lan didn't respond, Shen Wei turned back to look at him, only to find him leaning lazily against the wall. Half seriously, Jiao Lan grumbled, "This is horrible. I finally managed to gain a little ground with my lord, so I thought maybe I could get you to put out a little tonight. Now I'll be spending the night lonely and unsatisfied." He sighed as he added, "Tomorrow I'll be coming to work with dark circles under my eyes." Speechless, Shen Wei passed through the window without another word and disappeared into a cloud of black mist. Jiao Lan took a cigarette between his lips and lit up. He sat quietly in deep thought for a while, surrounded by the swirling smoke. Eventually, once he was sure Shen Wei was well and truly far away, he opened a desk drawer and loaded the gun he kept hidden under his pant leg. He then took out the wallet filled with yellow paper talismans. Urgent business suddenly coming up now? He stubbed out his cigarette and snorted. If I stay put, all the effort they put into luring you away, I can read, will be wasted. Jalan Lan put on a jacket and headed out of the city, driving straight for West Plum Village. Because, of course, he is going to get such talking to when his husband gets home. Incurable. Word of the day. Thank you, Blue. Incurable. In the dead of night, there was no traffic to speak of. It took him less than 2 hours to reach the village Wang Shengyang had mentioned. This far outside the city, the air was silent, aside from a dog's occasional bark. Zhao Yunlan circled the village, and finally, at the west side, he found a cluster of large pagoda trees. Every one of these trees had a trunk that was too thick for even a grown man to wrap his arms around. Zhao Yunlan parked the car and got out, then walked around the giant pagoda trees a few times. Among them, something peculiar caught his eye. Back when the Yao's great trial had befallen them, they had used the same trick, planting pagoda trees in the same formation as the Big Dipper. The curve of the spoon gathered yin energy, while the handle of the spoon extended to the west, symbolizing a bridge between the yin and the yang. Once enough yin was gathered, it was possible to find the entrance at the eye of the array. And here, coincidentally, there were untended graves scattered on the mountain across from these pagoda trees, an overgrown, cold hillside, with graves everywhere. Happy Halloween. That's the end of the chapter. I wonder, I'm just doing page math again, to see if... Oh, wait, we can't be making that good a time. Hang on. Actually, no, we're pretty bang on. Okay. Yeah, we should be able to get through chapter 9. And then that is where we will stop for today. We are on page 107 for chapter 9. The note Shen Wei had received said, "Something is wrong with the Great Seal. Return at once." I can see why he... It's fine. I can see why he left so quickly. The problem tonight with the Great Seal. I mean, that's like... It's like, sir, the Titanic just crashed. Like, okay. He rushed down through the Huangquan. Wandering souls made way before him, subconsciously parting like duckweed pushed aside by the waves. How long the descent took was impossible to say, but he finally reached the bottom of the Huangquan. Gradually, the water grew darker and darker, and the black mist around him thickened. And below that, there was no water at all, only a deathly, silent blackness. To walk through that blackness was to lose all sense of time and space. For those within, all that remained was the utter desolation of feeling like the one person left in all the world. It was impossible to see where you had come from or where you were going. The cold defied description. Here, thousands of chi below the Huangquan. In this vast emptiness where one's senses encountered nothing at all, lay the Great Seal. But just now, a violent stench of blood flooded the tranquil darkness. Something was quickly approaching. Shen Wei went down on one knee, pressing a hand against the ground. "Show yourselves." He was immediately surrounded by 7 or 8 Yochu, all of them roaring as they threw themselves at him. How naive, he scoffed. In all likelihood, the Yochu were appearing outside the Great Seal due to Zhao Yunlan's summoning of the Ghost Army. Okay, no wonder he was pissed then. What Zhao Yunlan didn't know was that the ghosts of the Ghost Army weren't ghosts in the traditional sense. When folktales spoke of a ghost army, they referred to powerless earthbound spirits under the netherworld's command. Such spirits had been ordinary mortals in life, and in death they remained unremarkable, with little power. How could they dare answer the staggeringly arrogant call of perish, foes, though mortal or god, and any may fall by their blades? No. What the ghost army summons brought forth were things from a place devoid of light, that was deeper than the Huanquan and darker than hell. The lightless land that held the prison of the great disrespect. The great disrespect. That's capitalized, by the way. The great disrespect. Jalan Lan subheader. Back when Pongu had split apart the sky and earth, separating the clear from the muddied was earth. Everything had its natural order. Chaos was divided. After that, the muck that was earth passed through an eon of sedimentation, and this place had come into existence to contain the filth, a place outside heaven and earth. Unfortunately, when I actually don't know how to pronounce that, and that has an accent above the U, so should probably look that up. Had created people from mud. She'd rushed to the job. She didn't wait until the filth in the ground had fully settled to the bottom before hastily shaping the mud into people. Thus, from the very beginning, humans were born with original sin. Humanity's lust for tyranny and destruction was rooted within it. The sages called the lightless place the Great Disrespect. They separated it and locked it away by force, creating the Great Seal. This ghost army came from beneath the Great Seal. They had no form of their own. The metal armor and the horses of bone were simply reflections of the summoners overactive imagination. If Jalan Lan hadn't used blood and iron as mediums, even if these things had crawled up out of the ground, anyone else would have seen only ranks of Yochu. The ghost army summons was an incredibly dangerous piece of sorcery. If the caster wasn't careful, it could easily backfire on them. Jalan Lan had pulled it off for 2 reasons. 1, he was talented, and 2, he was lucky. With Shen Wei keeping watch downstairs, the things Jalan Lan had called forth hadn't dared cross the line. But by summoning the ghost army, it was as if Jalan Lan, the gifted troublemaker, had drawn a vial of blood from the Great Seal, which was already crumbling. The emergence of these Yochu was a side effect. Shen Wei handily dealt with the Yochu who dared to approach, then flew toward the Great Seal. The Chaos King of the Gui, who had once been sealed here, had made his escape and was now running amok in the world. More and more Yochu were escaping into the mortal realm as the crack in the Great Seal spread. Shen Wei again knelt down as he silently chanted the sealing spell, temporarily fortifying the decaying seal. Slowly, the shaking calmed, but his expression remained deadly serious. How long could this peace be maintained? By the time he returned to the mortal realm, it was almost light out. When he arrived at Jalan Lan's small apartment, he made sure to move quietly, thinking Jalan Lan would be resting. Why would you think that? But as he entered, his expression turned grave. He switched on all the lights with a wave of his hand, and found the apartment empty. The blanket he had folded that morning was still at the head of the bed, undisturbed. Jalan Lan hadn't come back home. But of course not, because he's still out in the one place he shouldn't be. Meanwhile, at 4 Bright Avenue, Wang Zheng was busy scolding her colleague. Chu Shuzhe, we've been over this. Once you're done with all these paper talismans, clean them up. When the cleaning lady comes tomorrow, what do you expect her to do about them? Go Cheng Cheng darted over. I'll do it. Without a word, Da Ching walked straight into the wall that wasn't a wall in the Criminal Investigation Unit office. Inside was a totally different world. It contained endless rows of hardwood shelves, so tall that they seemed to run straight into the ceiling. The ladder for accessing them looked very old. The room's walls were inlaid with large sea dragon pearls that kept the space as bright as day while not harming the souls who could be hurt by sunlight. The scent of ancient books drifted from the shelves, the fragrance of ink that had settled for many years mixed with the musty smell of pages that had gone unopened for a long, long time. When Sangzan had arrived, he'd been put in charge of keeping the library in order. The collection included books in both traditional and simplified Chinese, neither of which could actually read. He could actually read. All he could do was meticulously compare the characters on the book spines to the labels on the shelves. He was extremely slow, but diligent, and never made a mistake. This was the first dignified job he had ever had. He was no longer a slave being beaten and cursed at, treated like an animal, nor was he a faithless leader whose only goal was the destruction of the people who looked up to him. Now he could live quietly and freely with the person he cared for most, exactly what he'd hoped and schemed for all his life but had never been able to attain. He treasured this new existence beyond measure. He's a whole... You could write an essay just on this guy. Seeing Daching enter, Sangzan greeted him earnestly. "Hello, cat." "Hello, stutterer," the cat replied. Sangzan stopped dead. Wang Zheng was a quiet, refined girl who would never teach him insults, so the term wasn't familiar to him. With perfect sincerity, he asked, "What is a slutterer?" Daching stepped over the wooden shelves. Thoroughly preoccupied, he gave a careless lie in response. "It means good bro." Sangzan nodded in understanding, then enthusiastically gave it a try. "Oh, hello, cat slutterer." When Daching didn't reply, Sangzan continued, "Cat slutterer, what do you went to read?" Daching lay down on the shelf above Sangzan's head. "Jalan Lan, Director Zhao. Did he return the book he took out a few days ago? Let me see it." It was as if Sangzan were taking a foreign language listening test. He attentively tilted his head, then patiently asked Daching to repeat the request 3 times. Finally, he got the gist. Beaming with accomplishment, he pulled the book that was waiting to be reshelved off the little cart. Thus one. The cover was already ragged, and there was a coffee stain on the corner. No need to say which heathen was to blame for that. The simple title, Soul Book, was written forebodingly on the cover. It had been slightly ripped, making it look even more tattered. Daching jumped down from the bookshelf to the little cart. "No, not now. I am rejecting this reality." Okay. He flipped through the book with a paw, only to find its pages blank. There was nothing at all to see. His heart sank. His cultivation was inadequate. For whatever reason, Daching's current power was less than a tenth of what it had once been. I am too jazzed in general to be reading this book. Okay. But he was still an old cat Yao, who had lived tens of thousands of years. Would he lose to Zhao Yunlan, a mortal? If his cultivation wasn't up to the task, how had Zhao Yunlan done it? "I've never seen this book before." Daching patted the book, unconsciously turning in circles on the spot and chasing his own tail with anxiety. Where did it come from? Who had put the book there? Why was Yao Jinlan the one who'd come across it? Of course, if Daching didn't know the book's origins, there was no way Sangzan would. The black cat and ghost stared at each other until, finally, the cat lowered his head and leaped to the floor, feeling uneasy. As he left, he found he wasn't even in the mood to eat his favorite food, jerky soaked in milk. Zhao Yunlan was doing well for himself. He had food, shelter, and more. He even had some spare time to think about love and lust. Things were going smoothly for him. The black cat was lazy by nature, and many human concerns were beyond him, but seeing Zhao Yunlan simply be a dumbass youngster with many joys in his life was very gratifying for Daching. This wasn't a boat he wanted to see rocked, and yet... That's a scene break. Zhao Yunlan, who had been out all night, wrapped his coat more tightly around himself as he stood in front of the grave-covered hill. Back when they'd been wrapping up the reincarnation dial case, he had followed the soul-executing emissary to Li Qian's home. Up on the roof, he had accidentally overheard something, that the creature's master had gone to the effort of having him brought before you. What did that mean? Before Shen Wei's identity had been revealed, he'd kept avoiding Jalan Lan. Thinking back on it now, someone had orchestrated their meeting, putting him right in Shen Wei's path. Was it the ghost-faced figure? Why would that person try so hard to steer Shen Wei toward him? And then there was the black notebook that the Netherworld had sent to him via a Reaper. That book had confirmed Shen Wei's identity. Had that been the Netherworld's goal when giving it to him? Why? Jalan Lan felt as if he were standing over a massive vortex. There was more going on than he could see, with innumerable hands reaching out of it. Some trying to shove him away, others trying to drag him in. Each one seemed to have its own agenda. Every face was shrouded in mist. Looking at the hill, he saw a haunting wisp of light, a ghost fire, halfway up the slope. The cold light seemed to stare at him from a close distance, like dangerous eyes in the night. He quickly realized that the ghost fire was moving with him, stopping dead when he stopped. It seemed to be guiding his way, or luring him. Jalan Lan decided to follow its lead, which meant slowly walking out among the untended graves outside the village. The air around him thickened with fog. The fog rapidly grew heavier until it was impossible to see more than a meter ahead. He and the ghost fire, its edges blurring in the fog, might have been the only things in the world. Ice-cold water droplets occasionally landed on his face as moisture gathered in the air. Now and then there came a sigh right beside his ear, as if countless souls were also picking their way through the woods on the slope. Jalan Lan didn't look at them. These ordinary souls might not seek to harm the living, but that didn't make them kind. They wandered the mortal realm, refusing to enter the reincarnation cycle. Every voice was weeping. Everyone felt that they had been wronged. In all the world, how many people went willingly to their death? Jalan Lan kept walking. The white mist and the hands reaching out of the graves all avoided the wide hem of his dark gray coat. Not a single wandering ghost dared approach him. When the sound of crying began to come from all around him, Jalan Lan stopped among the graves and spread his palms, revealing the bright flame of a burning yellow paper talisman. Sobs turned into screams, and countless blurry shadows raced one another to escape. The thick fog must have been flammable, as the flame in Jalan Lan's hand burst up from his palm like a fiery dragon and incinerated every trace of white mist in the graveyard. If you want to wail about how horribly you've been wronged, go to the Yanlo courts and bang on the drums there to voice your grievances, Jalan Lan said, his face stern. What are you crying at me for? He looked up and saw that the ghost fire that had guided him had disappeared. The night was as cool as water now, the starry sky as clear as if it had been scrubbed. The third quarter moon hung in the sky, and the now dry wind scraped at his exposed skin like a blade. Jalan Lan pulled his scarf up to cover half of his face. At that moment, a noise came from beside him, its sound swinging from near to far. It was a gruff voice, and it was singing. Oh, we have lyrics, okay. Three-quarter moon, forgotten grave mounds, ghost fire leads, and resentment abounds. Wind through the trees, the bone flute's song, foxes in human skin laugh along. Ah, noble guest, hearken unto this old man, one head of living for fine sterling, whole skin of a beauty for gleaming gold, fat of 100-day infant, 2 or 3 pounds, for half a lifetime's riches be sold. And if you offer your souls 7 and 3, I promise ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The voice was like nails on a chalkboard. It made one's scalp crawl. Jalan Lan's voice, in turn, was frigid. Legend says that when an antagonist's opening monologue is too long, they pay for it with their lives. He could hear rustling within the woods, as though countless small footsteps were passing through. Jalan Lan flicked his lighter and held the tiny flame up high, creating a small halo of light. His head snapped around as a small, short shadow darted behind him, leaving the echo of a laugh like a morning bird's cry in its wake. Gripping a paper talisman, Jalan Lan silently stood his ground. The creature seemed afraid of him. It kept flying in circles, testing the waters, but never dared approach. A long whip uncoiled from his hand, quick enough to create a breeze. Lashing out at an incredibly cunning angle, it curled around the thing's waist. With a flick of Zhao Yunlan's wrist, the whip slammed toward the ground, pulling a scream out of the thing's throat. Taking his first good look, Zhao Yunlan saw that what he'd brought down was a person? About a meter tall. The person's face was crammed full of wrinkles, and his jutting nose took up almost half of his face, shoving his other features into what little space was left. With nowhere to go, they huddled together awkwardly. Upon first glance, he looked like a giant, inauspicious bird. His bean-sized eyes were murky enough to obscure their whites, and being caught in his gaze was rather creepy. He let out a sudden laugh, revealing a mouthful of large, crooked yellow teeth. Half squatting, Zhao Yunlan rudely asked, "What the hell are you?" The bird person gave him a dark stare. In a voice like a cracked gong, he said, "Brat, don't act so cocky. You're in deeper waters than you can imagine." Zhao Yunlan snorted. "Please educate me, then, if you know so much. Exactly how deep are they?" He took out a cigarette and deftly set it between his lips. His lighter twirled between his fingers as its flame sparked to life. There was a sharp click, followed by faintly minty smoke that set the bird person reeling and coughing. Zhao Yunlan kept a firm grasp on the soul-guarding whip, not giving an iota of slack. "You were the peddler just now?" The bird person scoffed. "That's me. Is there something you'd like to sell?" Ignoring the question, Zhao Yunlan narrowed his eyes and asked, "I guess that means you're the one going around with the merit brush, then." This time, there was no answer. Tiny, sneaky eyes just stared at Zhao Yunlan like a venomous snake. Zhao Yunlan flicked the ash from his cigarette, grabbed the bird person's collar, and dragged him up so they were eye to eye. Except the 4 hallowed artifacts aren't things you can buy just anywhere and get a free gift with purchase. You expect me to believe you have the merit brush? Come on now, who sent you? Who told you to lure me out here with some knockoff? The bird person had been exposed, but he didn't panic. A malicious smile crossed his face, further heightening his avian appearance. "Someone you wouldn't dare to offend," he rasped. "The only people I don't dare offend are my mother and my wife." "Which of them are you fit to run errands for?" Zhao Yunlan flung him back to the ground. "I'm out of fucking patience. Push your luck too far and I'll kill you, so hurry and spit it out already." The bird person gave him a strange look, then croaked, "West-northwest of the Western Sea, north-northwest of the Northern Sea, 130,000 li..." Oh, there's 2 footnotes about this. "From Haine Shizhou, or Record of 10 Lands Within the Seas, is a collection of strange legends and tales compiled during the Han Dynasty with author unknown. 1 li is an ancient unit of length equal to about 500 meters. Okay. 130,000 li from the shore. Surrounded by unpassable waters. Push open the heavenly gates to enter the heavenly palace." That comes with another footnote. "From the Huinanzi? Not sure. A collection of essays from the early Han Dynasty based on a series of debates in the court of Luan, Prince of Huainan." "What power, what greatness! Do you remember it still?" Zhao Yunlan gave him a blank stare. "No, even as a kid I always failed my language arts classes." The bird person started to laugh. Moving one deformed arm with difficulty, he reached into his clothes and took out a tiny golden bell. "Then do you not remember this, either?" The mere sight of bells had always given Zhao Yunlan goosebumps. Bells could serve as a medium, and generally had the ability to summon souls and gather spirits, and in the absence of a soul fire on his left shoulder, his ethereal and corporeal souls weren't as stable as other people's. As a result, he struck without hesitation, stomping on the birdman's arm and shattering it. Then he bent over to pick up the golden bell. But that palm-sized bell seemed to weigh half a ton, so heavy that the attempt to move it hurt his wrist. The birdman guffawed. "The great! Can't even pick up a bell! Is there anything more absurd? You really are just a mortal." A sinister wind kicked up around them. The bell, still hanging from the birdman's broken limb, rang faintly a single time. Zhao Yunlan's nerves went taut, and the soul-guarding whip lashed out, sending a huge ball of ghost fire flying. The ghost fire struck the top of a large tree with a trunk almost too thick to see around. The tree immediately started to visibly wither and blacken. In but a moment it was reduced to dead and desiccated wood. The wind rapidly blew clump after clump of ghost fire in Zhao Yunlan's direction. His whip cracked again and again as he backed up more than 20 meters. White bone claws reached out from the grave mounds on the mountainside, crawling up from underground. The birdman Zhao Yunlan had stomped on just seconds ago floated slowly into the air before a dense backdrop of ghost fire. The little golden bell dangling from the birdman's broken limb swayed gently with the breeze, chiming almost inaudibly. It was as if it had woken up all the yin energy in the mountain. White mist began billowing from the top of the dead tree. The crow nesting there let out a long cry, then shot up into the deep, endless night sky, lit by a moon that had turned a brilliant, hazy-edged scarlet. It had become clear to Zhao Yunlan that this night probably wasn't going to end well for him, and he knew when to call it quits. Did he? Does he? Will he? Running toward the edge of the woods, he called, "Hey, don't skip straight to a fight out of nowhere. You haven't even told me why you lured me here. It can't just be because you're bored and wanted to fight me, right? I sit in an office all day long and barely exercise. It won't be a fair fight. We can't find a more civilized way to resolve this, don't you think?" After stomping on someone's arm and breaking their bones, he was asking them for a truce. The birdman just smirked at him. The ghost fires pursuing Zhao Yunlan were relentless. Just as they were about to set his back ablaze, he grabbed the branch of a large tree, quickly pulled himself up, and then swung through the air and backflipped to the ground. The ghost fires just barely missed him. Animating the dead, moving bones, commanding ghost fire, are you a ghost cultivator or an immortal on Earth? To the best of my knowledge, ghost cultivators fear encountering living humans in case it ruins their forms of pure yin or reminds them of when they were alive, needless distractions that could manifest as internal demons. What does that leave, my lord? Are you some sort of netherworld bureaucrat? Kindly enlighten me as to your department and position. Furious, the bird person sneered. Screw the netherworld. I'd never stoop to taking orders from them. Ah, Zhao Yunlan nodded. I see how it is. You're one of the Yao, right? Which tribe? Realizing he'd let too much slip in just a few short sentences, the bird person snapped his mouth shut. Zhao Yunlan's eyes gleamed as things fell into place. Hints of dimples appeared on his face. No, don't tell me. Judging by your appearance, you're from the Black Crow tribe, right? Those who hear the voices of the dead? I'll have to have a chat with your tribe's esteemed elders later. I've always had a pretty solid relationship. No, that is just one page. With the Yao. We may not be all buddy-buddy, but we're at least cordial with each other. So, what's the meaning of all this? It was clearly a bad idea to let Zhao Yunlan continue guessing. The bird person started to ring the golden bell, only for Zhao Yunlan to suddenly brandish his hands after hiding them behind his back. At some point, during everything that had happened, he had cut his own finger and used the blood to draw a complicated motif across 2 paper talismans, half on each one. Now, as he brought the pair together, they were flawlessly aligned and had already burned more than halfway. One pointed to the sky and the other pointed to the ground. Zhao Yunlan abruptly let go. A thunderous explosion arose out of nowhere as a dragon of fire took shape. In an instant of flashing lightning and flying sparks, the entire hillside of graves was scorched black. Countless ghost fires were silently swept up in it. The huge flame ignited the hem of the Crow tribe member's shirt. But the short, ugly crow didn't even flinch. Though he was gaunt and slight of nature, for a moment an awe-inspiring sternness showed on his unpleasant face. In spite of himself, Zhao Yunlan paused and stared. Within the fierce flames, the crow's face was split between human and bird. Pitch-black feathers appeared on his body. His shriveled, deformed wings spread and immediately caught fire, an ugly, pitiful sight on his back. With a scream up to the sky, he transformed into a cloud of black mist within the fire and disappeared into the golden bell. The color of the firelight surrounding the bell suddenly changed, as though thousands of spotlights had converged. Zhao Yunlan closed his eyes at once, but it was already too late. Molten pain seared his eyeballs. Holding his arms in front of himself, he swiftly backed away, unable to see a thing. The sound of bells rang out as if hunting down his soul. It was like a nail being driven right into his ear. In his daze, it seemed as though he could hear the sound of mountains collapsing. The center of a huge pillar that reached all the way to the sky fractured, and from someplace up high, an endless stream of boulders tumbled down. They rumbled and roared as if the sky itself were on the verge of falling. And from somewhere far away, at the edge of the world, a booming voice seemed to call out, Kunlun! It was like the toll of a giant bell, pleasing to the ear, yet solemn. A flood of blurry images flowed into Jalan Lan's head all at once, but before he could make any sense of them, he suddenly felt a new presence behind him. Someone who had... I have a hunch. Someone who had been spying on the fight for who knew how long, only now coming forward to snatch up the loot. Whoever it was reached out to grab Jalan Lan's shoulder. Jalan Lan managed to sidestep diagonally, fighting dizziness, and cracked the soul-guarding whip in the other person's direction. There was a small noise, followed by a tremendous yank from the other end of the whip that seemed to be trying to pull him over. There was no time for regrets over the whip. Almost instantaneously, Jalan Lan let go, but was still unable to dodge in time. Phantom silent, a hand touched the back of his neck. The world went black as Jalan Lan lost consciousness. The person who had knocked him out caught him as he fell, revealing himself to be the ghost-faced figure Jalan Lan had seen at the sacrificial altar below the mountain river All. The ghost-faced figure's wide sleeves fell upon the smoldering remains of the fire, snuffing it out in an instant. Even the thunder calmed. Holding Jalan Lan effortlessly, he bent to pick up that little bell that was as heavy as the Monkey King's staff. That's a footnote. The Monkey King's staff was said to grow or shrink at will and is described as weighing about 8 metric tons in the journey to the west. He lifted it with but 2 fingers, holding the object up to study it for a while. With a sudden snort, he tucked it away in his sleeve as he turned to leave. Having come up empty at the apartment, Shen Wei... Scene break. Scene break. He's on... That was a scene break. Having come up empty at the apartment, Shen Wei next raced to 4 Bright Avenue just to find the building dark. The only ones working were a diligent group of ghosts. Half mad with worry, Shen Wei stood in the courtyard and took several deep breaths. Having called himself as much as possible, he cast his senses out to feel for Jalan Lan's whereabouts, only to discover with a shock that Jalan Lan was heading right for him. Shen Wei whipped his head back to see someone familiar hovering high up in the air. Gentle, refined, Shen Lasha's expression changed instantly. The ghost-faced figure, the Chaos King of the Gui, calmly took hold of the soul-executing blade, which was presently pointed at his chin. Wholly unafraid, he glanced down and smoothed out Jalan Lan's clothing, which had been blown about haphazardly in the wind. He gave a light chuckle. Seeing you, he'll stop at nothing to get into your good graces. He can't even be chased away. Seeing me, he attacked with that whip of his without a second thought. What a biased man. Let go. Shen Wei practically gritted each word out between his teeth. Don't you dare touch him with your filthy hands. Filthy hands? Ghostface laughed. Are yours so clean, then? Shen Wei's expression turned to ice. As Ghostface tossed Jalan Lan over, Shen Wei hurriedly banished his blade to keep from injuring him, then caught him steadily. He's fine, Ghostface continued. Someone tried to forcibly awaken the one hidden within his souls. As for why, I'm certain you can figure it out. The Netherworld has never accepted you as one of their own. I do hope you'll give some careful thought to who's better to you, and whether or not those irrelevant people are worth ruining yourself for. His gaze fell upon Jalan Lan as he continued. Consider who you are. You could have anyone you want, even if... Do you really need to fear loss so badly that it keeps you from attaining what you want most? Even I pity you. Still cold as ice, Shen Wei said, Your concern is noted. An uncanny smile appeared on Ghostface's mask. Well then, don't regret it. Then Ghostface turned, his wide cape curling up high behind him, and vanished into the night. that's the end of the chapter. That's one way to end the Halloween stream. Damn. Ooh. Oh, worthy of the holiday. Thank you so much. We're on page 125 for chapter 10, and it is time to go. Oh, man. I was wondering exactly the how, when, and where he would approach. Although, calling him Ghostface is pretty funny for anyone who's a fan of the Scream franchise. That's going to take a second for me to get used to. Well, shit. Woo. Yeah, the Halloween cliffhanger. There it is. There it is. Also, like, the grand introduction of Ghostface. Yes. That was fantastic. That was so much fun. So, that is it for the stream. Was there anything I wanted to mention? Oh, during the break, I realized that I could have been a good YouTuber about this and found some cool, or some like fun, like too spooky Halloween lo-fi for the break and like redone the break screen to be a little fun Halloween vibes. I only just realized that during the break. Because I think that's such a new element. The new screen and the lo-fi is such a new element to the channel that I did not even factor it in to my Halloween vibes at all. But this means I'm definitely going to do something for like fall vibes and then, you know, Christmassy vibes and New Year stuff. Like now that I've thought of it, I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to find all the things just to give us some nice little bells and whistles to go on these streams. I cannot believe that I didn't freaking think of that, though. But I will definitely change that for next time to have some appropriate break entertainment for you guys. And then also, just quickly before I leave, just in case, if you're into gaming, you probably know this because it's everywhere. Dragon Age Veilguard comes out today. And boy, have they committed to diversity in their cast and their romance options and everything under the sun, kind of giving Baldur's Gate 3 a run for its money, is my sense. I've deliberately stayed away because I love the Dragon Age franchise, which has always been pretty damn inclusive as their games have gone on. So, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, or you just had or you don't usually play Dragon Age games or whatever, at least keep an eye on it for the impending like romancing certain character videos, because there are some good romance options. I'm just saying. I will probably be blabbing about it on the Gaywatch Tumblr. I'm not gonna lie. I am hoping to get in at least to create a character today in Dragon Age, so that I don't know if this is his name, but if you know who a Dragon Age is, I plan on romancing. If I can remember his name. I don't think I've heard it said out loud. Lucanus? I don't know. Lucanus, I think is his name. I plan on trying to design a really hot guy to be my main character, just so that he can have vibes with... I hope it's Lucanus, otherwise this is going to look really silly right now. Anyway, Dragon Age Veilguard is finally out now after like a decade of game development. So if you were looking for something to do tonight, you should check that out. It's going to be really queer. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know that it's kind of a catch-22 with holding holiday streams because obviously a lot of people are busy for the holidays. But I still keep streams going for any holidays because there are people who aren't. There are people who just chill at home for holidays. And maybe they want a little something special as well. I don't like that there are such dead spots in programming for holidays. Maybe because I'm a huge introvert and I know what those dead spots feel like. So thank you so much for tuning in on this specific stream for Halloween. I hope you had good Halloween time vibes. I hope the rest of the weekend treats you beautifully. I will be back on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as per usual, to keep reading all the good gay shit at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, although Daylight Savings is coming up quickly. I will see you then for more of Volume 2 of Guardian. Have a lovely weekend. Please take care of yourselves, and I will see you next week.